week 4 keeping score. Oh my god, that one rhymed.
Oh man, a
time,
poet.
Everyone. A very exciting time.
Polisky, the poet.
A poet, don't you know it? Oh my god, I can't stop.
And the video.
Boom. Yeah, I don't even need to go into it. So this is the results from week 3. For those of you that have not partaken. What those? If you haven't seen Sneaky Starts before, this is basically we go through the weekly results for running back and wide receivers, for players that were drafted in the top 24 at each position, starters at each position, and see which of them finished as top 12 of the position, RB1 or wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
This kind of works out nicely because the ADP lines up with the sort of 0 RB and robust RB cutoff of round 5, because that's usually where the 24th wide receiver and running back are going. And we stop at running back 1 and wide receiver 1 because, honestly, having a running back 2, wide receiver 2 doesn't help you win your week. You don't lose your week from it, but you're not winning your week because, oh man, I had the 18th best running back this week. That doesn't really help you. So we're looking for those guys that are helping you actually win your week as sort of a study of, is there 0 RB working better? Is robust RB working better? Or is it really neither? And it doesn't really matter if you go with one of these strategies.
I feel like this was a good week for both.
This was a good week for both, yeah. To sort of quickly recap, running back had the lead coming into this week. 14 players to 11 players over the course of the first 2 weeks. And now we enter week 3, and we get an even tie. They're the running back numbers up on that screen.
Bam.
And as you can see, you can't see Derek, but as the audience can see.
I can pretend. I'm imagining.
This was a good week for the early round running backs. We haven't really seen that yet outside of David Johnson.
Finally.
Yeah. David Johnson is the only player drafted in the top 12 at their position who has finished top 12 every week so far. Only player, period. No wide receiver has done that yet. So that's
David Johnson.
That's a good vote for early running back if you happen to take him.
The RB1 David Johnson.
The RB1 David Johnson. Quickly running down the list. First was Tevin Coleman, drafted running back 46, with his 3-touchdown fluky game. You probably weren't starting him, though. Maybe you were. Maybe you owned just Coleman. You're like, let's flex him. But for the sake of this argument, you probably weren't. Second was Devonta Freeman, the other Atlanta running back. With
Look
only,
at that.
With only 0.2 less fantasy points. He gets 1 touchdown, but actually piles up yardage. The Atlanta running back I'd rather own at this point. He was drafted in the RB7 in the second round, so that's a good sign for early running backs. Third was LaShawn McCoy.
There we go.
With 23.6 fantasy points, drafted as the RB12. At the beginning of the third round. Fourth was Davey Johnson, coming back again. He was drafted as the RB2 first round early, so David Johnson is the running back to own so far. Fifth was the hype train Christine Michael, Seawoke. It finally explodes. It finally comes to fruition. He was drafted as the running back 42 in the 11th round. You probably started him last week, but you didn't draft him as a starter, so doesn't count. Sixth was Legarrette Blount, drafted as the running back 37 in the 9th round. Going to be a prime sell high after this next week, but he has been good through the first 3 weeks. Carlos Hyde was number 7, drafted as the running back 14 in the 3rd round, at the end of the 3rd round, really. The garbage time hero with 2 touchdowns. Chip Kelly insists on still running in garbage time.
Yeah, hey, they don't ask how, right? Just how many points.
Yeah, exactly. Jeremy Hill was 8th. He was the running back, drafted as the running back 20 in the 5th round, so he's kind of getting near that cutoff. DeMarco Murray finished 9th.
There he is.
Drafted as the running back 19. Also early 5th round ADP. I mean, this ADP is kind of an average of all the major sites. So you might be like, oh, that sounds kind of late or kind of early. Well, it's an average. 10th, Todd Gurley finally makes an appearance as an RB1.
Finally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Drafted as the RB1. And it hasn't worked out. And even as the 10th, it's not that great. But 20 fantasy points, you'll take it.
Yeah, definitely.
And then 11th was Darren Sproles, drafted as the RB45 in the 12th round. You weren't starting Darren Sproles. Don't pretend like you were starting Darren Sproles. Charles Sims sneaks in at number 12. Running back 39. Just edges out Mark Ingram for the 12th spot by, I think, 0.4 points.
Man. Ingram would have sounded so much better.
I know, Ingram. And I think Latavius... no, not Latavius. I forget who, but some other high-end running back was just behind Ingram. But, we're not counting it for the sake of being fair. And so that makes 7 running backs that were drafted as starters finish top 12. So majority of the top 12 were guys taken early, which, is a good sign. A sort of rundown of the colors you're seeing on screen. Bright green means they were taken as a top 12 running back. Yellow means it's an RB2, but a high-end RB2. And orange means they were like a fringe low-end RB2. But you were probably still starting them knowing the state of running back. So that was 7. Let's move on to wide receiver.
How do they do? Tell me, Leo.
They also had 7.
What?
So this was a dead tie. Didn't do quite as well on the top, the early round wide receivers. Number 1 was starving Marvin Jones. His 32 fantasy
wide
points.
Receiver 1.
Yeah, the wide receiver 1 currently.
Wow.
He was taken in the 7th round. Like you might have been flexing him, but you didn't draft him as a starter. Terrell Pryor was number 2, drafted as a wide receiver 67 in the 16th round. So
he probably wasn't even drafted in most leagues.
No, I think he's on the wire in most leagues. So unless you listened to us last week, you weren't starting Terrell Pryor. 3rd was Manny Sanders as the wide receiver 29. Yeah, the squeaky wheel just outside of the starter range, so doesn't make the cut. He was taken in the 6th round. T.Y. Hilton comes in at number 4, drafted as the wide receiver 16th, 3rd round, finally explodes onto the scene. 5th was Jordy Nelson, drafted as the wide receiver 8 in the 2nd round. Jordy looking like Jordy of old.
He did. He was feasting.
Yeah, he was feasting, so that's good news for the Packers offense as a whole.
Yep.
I will say that, the narrative of, the Packers offense, Jordy's back, it didn't fix things, what's the problem? Well, Jordy wasn't really fully back until this week. After week 1, he's like, my legs feel heavy. And then the second week, they were against Minnesota, who can apparently stop any offense. And so now he's finally, really back in game shape, and we're seeing what this Packers offense really is with Jordy Nelson. 6 was Doug Baldwin, drafted as the wide receiver 21 in the 4th round, just making that starter cut. You might not have been starting him after 2 very slow weeks. Hopefully you did. Hopefully you saw the matchup and started him because he got you 22 fantasy points. Number 7 was Jarvis Landry, drafted the wide receiver 18 in the 4th round. 8th was Mike Evans, drafted wide receiver 11.
Another appearance from Mike Evans.
Mike Evans, I think, is the only wide receiver to appear on this list twice through the first 3 weeks. Let me confirm this. No, it's him and Antonio Brown are the only ones to appear on this list 2 out of 3 weeks. So
Evans hasn't appeared all 3?
No wide receiver has appeared all 3. No, I think Evans was just outside of the top 12 week 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So Evans has been very good to own. 9th was Allen Robinson, returning back onto the scene, drafted as a wide receiver 7 in the 2nd round. I'd like to just air out a gripe really quick about this. So
A-Rob.
So, Todd Gurley and Allen Robinson had essentially the same start to the season. Struggle mightily. Week 3, they come out. Both have similar production of 2 touchdowns, not amazing yardage, but they the bounce back week. The Todd Gurley week gets water thrown on of the yards per carry is still low. It was buoyed by these touchdowns. Don't expect that to happen again. Allen Robinson does essentially the wide receiver version of that. And it's Robinson's back. Of course he's back. There was no question he'd be back. So it's, it's a little bit of bias towards the wide receiver here that it's okay for Allen Robinson to get 2 touchdowns, and that's the bulk of his performance, but not Todd Gurley for some reason. Yeah, which doesn't really make any sense because Todd Gurley had the 2 carries from the 1 yard line, which I feel like is going to be a common occurrence. That's not a fluky thing, yeah.
Yeah, if you look at Allen Robinson's performance through the first couple of weeks, you see that he was heavily targeted in week 1, but had a lot of missed opportunities and had a terrible completion rate. Which I think is probably the equivalent of seeing a lot of volume as a running back and then just not producing with it.
Yeah.
So, like you said, he was basically the Todd Gurley of wide receivers.
He was, man. Yeah.
But people love Allen Robinson, so it was he's this prime buy low. Yeah. He's going to explode. But, I mean, geez, really, Blake Bortles hasn't looked very good. You can make the same argument about Allen Robinson as you can about Todd Gurley and the Rams offense. Todd Gurley's going to be held down because the Rams offense is just abysmal. Because Jacksonville, they look amazing right now. The run game.
Yeah, they can't run the ball at all.
Run game is incredible.
Defenses could just sell out to bracket Allen Robinson. What they're doing to Gurley, which is we're going to stack the box and stop Gurley. Defenses can do that with Allen Robinson. We're just going to remove Allen Robinson from the game and say good luck Bortles. And we might see that start happening. So, there's really any point to this other than we don't like the bias against Todd Gurley, I guess what it is.
Leave Todd Gurley alone.
Leave Todd Gurley alone, man. He's doing his best. All right, number 10 is Tavon Austin, taken as the wide receiver 41. Yeah, don't buy into this Tavon Austin thing.
That was just Mr. Pokemon Go.
Mr. Pokemon Go. Yeah, just fluky blown coverage. Don't expect to see him in here again, ever probably. Deshaun Jackson, number 11.
G-Jax.
The big play master. Drafted as a wide receiver 34 in the 7th round. Might have been flexing him, but you did not draft him as a starter. And last, just sliding into the starter list, Antonio Brown, the wide receiver 1, taken first overall, just barely finishes a wide receiver 1. And so that is 7-7. The wide receivers had 4 players drafted in the first 2 rounds that, had good weeks, and running backs had the same results. This was like pretty much a mirror week between wide receiver and running back. But the thing to point out is that the running back pool is getting smaller every week.
Yes.
It already doesn't have Jamal Charles and Le'Veon Bell, and then in week 3 it didn't have Jonathan Stewart or Doug Martin or Adrian Peterson, and there might be someone else I'm forgetting. Is there a 6th? Is there another high-end running back that was drafted?
Amir Abdullah?
No. There's someone else I'm forgetting.
You already mentioned Martin.
Did I say Doug Martin? Okay.
Yeah, you said Martin.
Either way, like the running back pool is already down 5 or 6 players
Thomas
out of the top 24. Thomas Rawls, that was it. Yeah, Thomas Rawls drafted as a starter. So 6 of the 24 guys drafted as starters didn't play in week 3. So it was 18 players his pool was taken from. Whereas with the wide receiver, it was just down Sammy Watkins and Keenan Allen. I think that was it. I think all the other top 24 wide receivers played. So it's the wide receivers had a bigger pool of players to pull from, but put up the exact same success rate, you could say, as the running backs. So
so doesn't this speak to positional scarcity with the running back, that you need to get these top end guys, or else you're going to be floundering trying to roster like these back end Jay Ajayi, Kenyon Drake, our Isaiah Kroll as your RB1.
It really does. So far, I mean, the total brings it up to running back 23 and wide receiver 18. So far running back is in the lead, but it's close. Really what we're seeing is that what the actual, if you want to say, strategy was to go wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, and then running backs round 3 through 5, because that's really where we're seeing the running backs shine, is rounds 3 through 5. And so that would have been it, but that's not really any specific strategy. That's kind of just a different version of best player available. So far we're saying that a balanced attack in the draft has paid off the most.
I like it. Yeah, keep in mind though, you're getting Le'Veon Bell back this week. You might be getting Jamal Charles back this week. So some of these early round running backs haven't even played. I mean, if you look at who was drafted in the first round, I'm going to count Lev Bell because he was probably drafted either at the end of the first round or the very beginning of the second round.
Yeah.
He hasn't even played. If you look at the other running backs that were taken in the first round, we have David Johnson, who's performing as he should be. We have Todd Gurley, who, I think he'll bounce back. But he hasn't had a great start to the season.
No.
We've had Lamar Miller and Zeke Elliott, who's starting to come alive. So I think we're going to see a lot of production out of these guys that were drafted in the first round. I don't think we're going to look back or Adrian Peterson, that's right. Outside of Adrian Peterson, who got injured and was not looking very good, to be honest, before his injury, I think we're going to see a season where a lot of these early round running backs are going to perform to their ADP. I think we'll see David Johnson continue. I think at the end of the year, Todd Gurley will have performed to his ADP. Maybe not running back 1, but I think he'll have performed to a first round running back.
Yeah.
I think Lamar Miller is going to rebound and have a running back 1 year. I think Lev Bell is going to come back and have a great year. I think Zeke Elliott is probably going to end up as an RB1 because he gets so much volume. And he did look pretty good in the last game.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, Zeke finished just outside of the top 12. I think he was 13 and 14 the last 2 weeks. So Zeke Elliott is basically an RB1, just like right on the fringes.
Yeah, to hammer on your point earlier, you know who else has gotten off to a slow start? Odell Beckham and Julio Jones.
Yeah.
If you look at them, no one's really talking about them. I've heard some people kind of mention Julio. They're slightly concerned because he's banged up a little bit. But, I mean, if you look at their overall point production right now, Odell Beckham is wide receiver 31.
Yeah.
And Julio Jones is, where is he on the list? He is wide receiver 22. So just in the wide receiver 2 category. And you compare them to Todd Gurley, who was off to like the worst start possible if you look at Twitter.
Yeah.
And he is right around in the same position as Julio Jones right now. He is a running back 2. Running back 23 overall, basically buoyed by his one big game. So Todd Gurley is in the same position as Allen Robinson. He's in the same position as Julio Jones. He's in the same position as Odell Beckham Jr. But who do we hear about the most?
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley, yeah.
The Julio one really worries me because Odell, it's just the touchdowns probably come. You worry a little bit about that defense being good enough that they don't really need to run up the score, and like Shepard's emerging and Cruz is back, so maybe Odell's targets come down a little bit. I'm worried a lot about Julio actually, because right now he's on pace for just over 100 targets, and he got 200 last year, and that's kind of how he ended up this elite wide receiver. If he's getting half the targets, if it's because they have these two like competent running backs and they decide to go a little bit more like run heavy and short pass heavy to these running backs, that's bad news for Julio Jones. He'll probably still have big weeks, but he won't be an elite guy on half of the targets he got last year. Yeah,
I mean, he had 2 good weeks. I don't want to crap all over Julio Jones. It was really this last week where he might have been a decoy that kind of has soured people on Julio because he only had 1 catch. He was basically non-existent out there. But his first couple of weeks, he put up touchdowns. He put up 100 yards against Oakland. And in week 1, he had 70 yards and a touchdown. So it's not like he's been putting up duds every week. He's actually had 2 solid weeks out of the 3. It was just week 3 was really, really bad with Julio Jones. I'm not worried about Odell. I'm not worried about any of these guys, to be honest.
No, I'm not even.
I'm not worried about Todd Gurley. No. I'm not worried about Julio. I'm not worried about Odell. Maybe Allen Robinson. If we had to talk about all these guys, Allen Robinson would probably be the guy I would focus on just because of how bad Jacksonville's offenses looked. And yes, you can say the same thing about Todd Gurley. The offense has not looked very good. But I think he will get the opportunity to score more so than Allen Robinson this season. I mean, maybe Jacksonville will turn into this garbage time team again where they're behind and Bortles is just throwing. But to me, to my eye, Bortles has looked worse this year than he did last year.
He's regressed.
Which is saying a lot. I mean, most people thought he was going to regress because Jacksonville would improve. Because they got Chris Ivory, they would start running the ball effectively, and then Bortles wouldn't have to throw the ball as much. But we've seen that not be the case. No. We've seen Bortles really, really struggle when he's under pressure, horrifically bad replacement level, essentially.
Yeah.
So when you bring pressure onto Blake Bortles, he's just throwing the ball to the other team. He's making horrible decisions, bad reads. He looks worse than he did last season, and I think that is going to hamper Allen Robinson a little bit. Now, if they do get the running game going, we've only seen 1 week out of Chris Ivory, so maybe he bounces back a little bit. But they really need the running game to get going for Allen Robinson. But, yeah. Anyways, we're just kind of railing on this whole zero RB treatment that Todd Gurley gets.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. We're not biased or anything.
We're not biased or anything. No. But yeah, that basically wraps up keeping score. Nothing else really to get into that. And we should probably wrap up this episode now that it's getting a little long in the tooth.
A little long in the tooth, a la Steve Smith, who you should start this week.
Sure.
Sure.
All right. Well, signing off.
Signing off. Follow us on Twitter, which is above your head.
Yes, above my head. Twitter.
Above your head. Yeah, right up there.
Boom.
Yeah, BenchStatsFF. Facebook is above my head.
Yeah.
So you can see our Facebook if you want. Follow us, add us, comment, do all that good stuff.
Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you have any questions about how to prioritize these sneaky starts, hit us on Twitter or comment on YouTube. We respond to YouTube pretty quickly.
Either way.
And yeah, we will catch you kids on the flippy floppy.
Flippy floppish.